Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Kent Ingle on the line. Kent, how are you?
I'm doing well. Doing great.
I'm so glad to have you on the show today. So for those that aren't familiar with you, why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Yeah, I currently serve as the 15th president of Southeastern University. Our main campus is in Lakeland, Florida, but we are a network campus. We literally have well over 200 campuses nationwide, and we're also international too. We're in Moldova, we're in Brazil, starting in Argentina and Uganda. So we just continue to grow in offering good access to higher ed.
I was going to say it's definitely providing access when you're venturing out of, Pinellas County and Lakeland, and I know the Tigers just wrapped up their spring training, yes. So it's all good. So when we were talking in the pre-show, you talked about this wasn't your original career. So I want you to go back a little bit and share some of those things because, and for the audience, one of the things that I want you to get from this interview is there's going to be highlights along the way of how leadership comes into play and what you're doing and how to make things better than you found it. So I'd really love to hear. Let's go back a little bit in your first career and then move on forward.
Yeah, I started in television sports and actually served as a sports anchor for 10 years, finishing my career in Los Angeles, working at NBC. That started actually when I was 18 years of age. I graduated from high school, didn't know where I wanted to go to college, didn't know exactly what I wanted to major, but I took advice of a great mentor in my life, a wonderful leader who told me, always follow your design, the passions, the giftings, the things that really, gel with who you are. And if you follow that, you're always going to find opportunity to serve, to lead, to be a part of something significant. And when I was just 18, I decided, well, I'll go to the local community college and take some courses on things I'm passionate about. One of them was broadcasting, and took a broadcast writing course. The news director happened to be the professor. He said, I like your work. How about coming to the local NBC station and serving as an intern? I jumped at the chance. He assigned me to sports. That's my favorite part. And right there in Bakersfield, California at KERO TV, started as an intern, worked with the sports anchor for 3 months. He left and got another job. I went into the news director, and 18-year-olds, they pretty much have it already figured out. I thought I had it all figured out. I said, hey, I can do this job. And he said, you know what, I'll give you a chance. And right on the set, I produced a show. He hired me, and I started doing weekend sports for the NBC station, and then the rest is history, and worked in that field for 10 years.
That's amazing. And of course, covering sports in Southern California, there's no shortage of stories to talk about. But that's kudos to you for being bold at that age and said, I'm going to go for it. Because we think about all the people in the world that have those gifts, they do something amazing, and something holds them back and they don't ask. And they just, nah. And I just think about that a lot when I engage people. It's like, no, ask for it. Worst thing that happens, they say no. They say no, then figure out, okay, why did they say no? What do I need to do to get them to say yes? And when you do that, that's when you start having personal growth. And that's when you start being a little bit more bold. And you're like, you know what? I know what I'm good at, and I know that I can do this job, and let me prove it to you. So, kudos to that director to give you that chance, because it obviously gave you an amazing career to start off. So from there, you left the sports game and then moved on into your next field. So let's share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the next area that I moved into was in ministry leadership, serving as a lead pastor of a local church that we planted in Northwest Los Angeles. I've always been a firm believer there are catalytic events that take place in your life that kind of speak again to what you're sensing is going on, experiences you're going through, kind of what your passions, how they shift. Again, you follow a design. And I just felt led through an event, an experience that took place in my life that was actually kind of a personal tragedy. My sister and her husband were involved in ministry leadership, and They happened to be out at an event with their youth that they were serving, and they dropped them off from that event. And on the way home, a drunk driver hit them head on, killed both of them. And through that experience, as difficult as it was, it's something about that stirred in my heart about the importance of serving people. And that's the other passion I have. I love to come alongside people, encourage them, empower them, help them in their growth and in their life, so they can bring their best self to the context. And I just felt like that's something I wanted to go into. And so did, and went back to college to get more education that would help me to be a great steward of being a ministry leader, and jumped into that career, and actually was in that career for about 10 years. It seems like about every decade I kind of switch into something that, again, continues to follow my design.
We've got similar paths where every 10 years or so I'd switch careers. So I was originally in public accounting, then went into IT, then it went into healthcare executive roles and executive roles in the nonprofit sector. And then after a little over a decade on that, launched my own business. So it's that, okay, and I should put it on a calendar. It's like, okay, in 2029, or 20, I should say like 2027, 2028, start planning, what the next adventure is. Cause you're going to change. And again, it's by, I think, design. I think just experiences of life and circumstances, whether good or tragic, can give you some insights to, okay, this is the path I'm going to take now. And that's the beauty of our life and the gift that God has given us is we can choose, but we as long as we're in tune with following and paying attention, I think that goes a long way. So you're in that role for a period of time, and then from there, I believe is when you went back to school. And how did that opportunity come up? Because it's interesting, especially across the country as well, because you were in California, and all of a sudden, Lakeland, Florida, and my parents used to live in Sebring, and I used to work for an insurance company that had a footprint in Lakeland. So it's been a long time since I've been there, but I'm familiar with it. So what got you there? How did that translate?
So while I was serving as a lead pastor in a church in Southern California, I had built within the church a program, an educational program that helped to develop leaders, helped to provide educational stewardship for people who wanted to continue to grow and be a good steward. Again, I believe in life stewardship. That's always bringing your best self to the context, and that means you need education to make you better, sharper, and I had built that, and so there was actually a university in Northwest, the Northwest Pacific up in Washington, Northwest University in Kirkland, Washington, had noticed some of the things that I had done, how I led, and actually got a call from the president of that university and said, we've seen your work and what you've done in terms of developing education and ministry leadership. We have an opening for a dean of our College of Ministry and Leadership, and wondered if you would be interested in coming and developing the kind of programming that would help raise up brand new leaders that would go into that field and serve and lead. And we just felt like, wow, what an opportunity, because you can invest in really generations, if you will, of students that come through that will go out and serve and lead congregations all across America, as well as even overseas. And so we stepped into that role, and I started serving as the dean of that college at Northwest University, and we saw significant growth in that college. And as a result of that, actually ended up getting a call about 6 years later from the search committee for a brand new president at Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida, and asked if we would consider coming and leading that university. They were kind of in a plateaued decline state. They had actually gone 2 years without a university president. So during that time, the university had lost significant enrollment. And of course, that translates into revenue and so forth. And they were looking for somewhat of a turnaround leader, and they had seen what I had accomplished in my local church there, and then also at Northwest University. And so long story short, went down to Southeastern. I've been there now 12 years as the president, and we've seen tremendous growth here at our university.
Yeah, and I know it's one of the things and many things that you're gifted at, but the one thing is, the turnaround, the 180-degree turn, because obviously that university was declining, didn't have a leader for 2 years. Normally, if you're a college student, you're thinking you don't really necessarily care about, is there a president, but it would get on the radar of some people, like, why isn't there a president? What's going on there? And then murmurings and, the professors and everybody else there, and all of a sudden they're a little bit uncertain about what's going on. They see the numbers declining. So all of a sudden you start losing key professors and other staff to other places. And you could really have it. So when you landed there and you obviously you surveyed the land and you said, okay, this is what's going on. What was some of the first quick wins that you were able to do to help kind of turn the ship a little bit and get it into the growth that it's seen ever since you've been there?
Yeah, so I've always used a process that's a system. I'm a systems thinker. I love to look at the big picture of organizations and understand how to accomplish that big picture mission, but also look at the inner parts, the smaller parts of that organization. How do they interconnect and relate to each other so that you can begin to produce growth, health, change the culture so it'll be very collaborative and empowering. And I use a system. I call it framework leadership. In fact, I've actually written a book called Framework Leadership, but it's really about developing a system of stewardship that will always sensitize you to the context in which you're trying to create meaningful change. And I've always believed the framing process is necessary for organizational change. And what it does is a framework system gives the leader a map of the unknown. And I think it helps provide a structure and a rationale and a method for moving an organization forward in the change process, even when a lot of times the destination is unclear. And so going into that opportunity, again, the university had lost significant enrollment. They had been as high as 3,400 students, and now they're down to about 2,200 students. So they lost over that 2-year period, over 1,000 students. And so there's a 4-step framing process we use to create the wins that will help you to start producing growth. And I think the first and most significant aspect of that is listening and going in and taking time to listen to the people. There's a saying, in fact, it's from Jim Collins in the book Good to Great. I love Jim Collins and his writing, but he writes this. He said, you can never know the potential of an organization until you know the potential of the people. And you need to take time to listen, learn, discover what the people have to say, the people that are there. And actually, the people that are there is what will differentiate your business, your organization, your university, because they have unique gifts and abilities and talents and experiences that make it unique, but you can't discover that until you take time to listen.
And that's a key thing. And I led a healthcare organization, and they were, I think, in their 3rd or 4th year, and they were averaging around 86% turnover of staff. That's almost 9 out of 10 people were leaving every year. And these aren't just, high school students. These are master's level and above educated clinicians that were just bailing out of the organization because the culture was horrible. The leadership wasn't listening. There was just toxicity throughout. So when I went in, I just sat down and I listened and I said, okay, if you were in my role, what would you do? What would you change? I said, yeah. And it was beautiful because when I first started, I went in as interim, and that was really a blessing in a way because I was there for just short of 5 years. And when I went in there, I said, look, I'm just a temp. So you can share everything with me. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just between us. And I kept that even after, I decided, I'd like to stay here. And they agreed with me. So, but I just had this conversation and got everybody's buy-in, and I looked for those quick wins. Okay, what can I do right now that can change something quickly without impacting things? Or dramatically, or it would impact it, but it wouldn't cost a whole lot or anything like that. So I started doing that, did 2 or 3 things like that. And then after that first year, that turnover rate went from 86% down to 6%. Wow. And I only, using a Jack Welch term, dehired 2 people. And it just, they weren't bad people. They just weren't the right fit there, and gave them glowing recommendations, and they went on to better positions for them. And I mean, much better in a couple places, but that everybody said, well, how did you do it? I said, I listened. I asked them what they needed, and they said something, and we could deliver it. And so we delivered it. It's so simple, but
Right.
it's so hard for so many people. It's just, well, why? It's like, just listen. And it has served me well. And it goes back to, I talk about a lot about a boss that I had at an internet market research firm back in my IT days, 20 something years ago. And he was one of those great bosses that just listened and told me, when you need something, let me know. Otherwise, here's all the things you need to do your job. Go at it. If you need me, I'm over here, and let me be and let me create. And I was that organization for several years. And that was during the .com era where recruiters were poaching all the time, going, here, I even had one recruiter that placed me in an organization. 6 months later, he calls me and he says, I got another position for you. It's like, you just placed me here. And he said, it's 20,000 more a year. Okay, when's the interview? And, back then, I was young, I would look at it now going, I'm more of a, commitment guy. But in your youth, you're like, look, I got to start, banking here. It's like, let's start growing and things like that. And it just took advantage of the situation, but without harming anybody, of course. But still, at the end of the day, it just boils down to, if you listen to your people, and Jim Collins is amazing when he writes about that, is if you understand the opportunities that you have with the people, you create the environment for them to thrive and grow. Your organization's going to be beyond what you can imagine. And everybody's going, what did you do? I listened. It's not like this. Okay, I went to the store and I bought these magic seeds and plant them. Well, the quote unquote magic seed is just listening to your people and being there for them.
Exactly. And it's powerful, and it changes the culture immediately. And together you can begin to create vision, and all be on the same page. I mean, that's what people want. They want to feel valued. They want significance, and that's what listening does. And we always have to remember, as leaders, we're not leading assets, we're leading people. And everything that will ever be accomplished in an organization is by, with, and through the people in your community. So listening is a powerful tool to begin leading change and transformational growth. And I've always used the appreciative inquiry process when I listen, because a lot of people, they want to start with what's wrong with an organization. Tell me what's wrong with everything and why do we need to, instead, what's right about this organization? What do you appreciate here? And what do you bring to the table that continues to help it flourish and grow? And just listening. And out of that, you'll be amazed at how you'll unlock dreams in people's minds and hearts, and the effort that they want to make towards creating growth and health.
It's like the phrase we hear, when people leave organizations, they give them an exit interview, but I'm a big fan of stay interviews. Okay, why are you still here? Is it the coffee? It's a snack machine, it's the foosball table, those are pretty cheap on Wayfair. You can get one for yourself at home. So you don't have to come here for it, but what is it? And then those people share, and then you can take that information and go, okay, how can we create this and make this grow even more? What are some things we can do? And, the front lines, they see the things that, the leadership up here, they don't necessarily see, because you're at a different vantage point. You're in a different part of the mountain. And when you get down in the trenches, which is really important for us to do, that's when you can see, okay, this is what's actually going on. Okay, what can we do to adjust this to make it easier on you? And you do it. And next thing you know, it's like, wow, everything's going great. The board's really happy with you, the community's and growing. And all of a sudden you're, going from a couple thousand students to over 10,000 students and expanding internationally. I'm sure that was not on their radar when they called you all those years ago, thinking, oh yeah, we're going to be in these foreign countries. They were wondering, are we going to still have a campus if we don't do something about it? So kudos to you and your team for turning that around, because we make it sound easy, people. It's not. It's a time consuming, but if you've got the passion and the drive and you're following your design, you can definitely make it happen.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. And when you begin leading that way, you're going to see new curves of growth and sustainability. There is no doubt about it. And that's what happened. Out of that listening exercise, we were able to build, on creating probably what would be the three most important issues in higher ed today. And that's accessibility, just giving access to people, giving educational access to people from all the way from certification all the way to graduate levels of education, and then affordability and experiential. And that is what has created the growth trajectory that we've had here at Southeastern University. But it starts with empowering the people to dream together, because you take the time to listen, learn, discover, understand the context of who they are and their contribution to the organization.
It's words to live by. So, Kent, love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah, you can go to kentingle.com, and there you'll find all the resources available, such as Framework Leadership, and I've written a few other books, and then also there's access to my podcast, Framework Leadership, and then several resource articles as well. So that's the best way.
Awesome. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, Kent, thank you so much for the work that you've done and are doing. It's making the world a better place. So thank you again for being on the show.
Privileged to be with you.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.